Hello and welcome to episode 3. We're here with Chris. He's with
Hello.
he's with me today. How cool is that? Now we've got to remember to look up here, Chris, because that's where the audience
Yes.
is. And we're talking about episode 3. It's about the decisions that we make when we're disconnected. And Chris tells me that, maybe disconnected is not the greatest word for when we're actually talking to the males. But I'm pretty sure the females would understand that as well. But it's more about when we're talking about disconnected, it's about when we haven't necessarily awakened is basically the word. And when we're awakened, that mightn't be understood either. But when we're awakened,
We,
this is
we've sort of lost it. It's when we've just lost it.
get lost it, or it's when we've finally worked out that there's more to the world than what we've been doing. So that's when we wake up. We're no longer sheep, so to speak, just following the herd. So why we choose the things that don't feel right. So when we make a decision and we make the feeling and it doesn't necessarily feel right, but we still make the decision, and how that changes when we return to ourselves. So that meaning how it changes when we finally wake up and think, oh, it's a bit like the hindsight feeling, which is, oh, maybe I should have made that decision because this is now how I feel about it. So we're going to go through a series of asking Chris some questions. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, no, I'll just tag along when need be.
so,
No.
so when we have the decisions we make when we're disconnected, what does that bring up for you?
Well, um, sometimes uh, we make decisions because we feel as though, we need to, we have to in life. It's the male thing to do. We don't necessarily may agree with it, or we may feel uncomfortable with it. And later on, we then realise how great it was. I'm glad we did that. Sometimes we, feel as though that I still wish I hadn't have done it, but in a way, I'm glad I did it because I learned something by it. Uh, so it's not always a good thing, and it's not always a bad thing. I think it's how you look upon it afterwards.
So just on that, and you look back that you've made the decision, is it a hindsight? Because you said, you learned from it. And I don't know if everyone makes a decision and thinks, afterwards, oh, I made that decision. It wasn't great, but at least I learned from it. Because I think when you say at least I learned from it, that's when you're actually awakening or awakened.
Well, when you take on something, you're hesitant. You know nothing. What you feel as though you know about it isn't always the case. So That's the learning part of it. You open up to it. Some people find it hard to take that. They're just going to have always hate it, no matter what, and not allow for uh, any benefits of it that may come in that you may end up seeing because you're open-minded to it.
Hmm.
If you can understand that at all.
So open.
Sometimes like we need a job. We need to do a job, running out of money or whatever like this. So we take the first job that we can get. We hate doing it. I hate doing the job. But if you look at it after we do that and maybe go to a better job, we can look at that and we can learn from it. And what you're learning from it is how you adapted to doing something you hate. Um, there's obviously people out there that will never do that, just and end up manifesting to the point where they hate every job. Their attitude is horrible in every job because that's what's controlled them all the way through, instead of having a more of
An open mind.
an open mind to it all.
And maybe that's the word we need instead of being disconnected or awakened, having an open mind. Let's go
Yes.
with that. I like it. So let's go through the first questions, which is understanding disconnected decisions or understanding when you don't have an open mind decisions. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So have you ever made a decision that made sense at the time, but didn't feel right once you were actually in that decision?
Yes, I think we all go through that. I think we all suffer from what would be the term for it, or the word for it. Uh, Slipped my mind now, but we often go through moments and times where, oh yeah, I can do that, I can do this, and or be, oh, well, I've got to take this on. Well, it'll be a great challenge and everything like this. And then we go through and think, oh God, I wish I hadn't have done this. Oh, geez, I just don't feel so good. It's not me. It's not me at all. I can't deal with this. I didn't know that this is, what entailed to do everything in the paraphernalia of what I've had to do that I didn't realize. It was a great decision at the time, but wow. And even that itself is a learning thing, isn't it? You're able to see sides of personalities and yourself that come out that you wouldn't have come out unless you put yourself in that situation.
So the feeling is that when you went in it, you realized, I like how you said, this is not me, because then you're actually working out, well, this decision that I made doesn't align with who I
You don't feel,
actually am.
yeah, you don't feel comfortable with it. Um, excuse me. I can give you an example. Um, I made a decision to volunteer in a particular place, and I felt that'd be great. I want to work with these kind of people. I'm doing nothing. I'm available. I feel as though I have an empathy type of mind and careness and stuff like this. And then when it finally got to me passing all tests to be able to take on this voluntary job, it then turned out for other reasons that doesn't need to be said now that I was told, no, you can't do that because this will happen. And and I thought, wow, this was a bit of a shock to the system. I really wanted to do that. But looking at it now, I don't know how I would have coped with that. I really don't know how I would have coped with it and how I would have um, you know, would have I been able to do that particular job? And in hindsight, I'm sort of in a way glad I didn't do it because the more I think about it now, the more maybe it wasn't me, it was deciding at the time because part of me wanted to help, but that kind of help I mightn't have been able to physical deal with. So in hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't take it on without really knowing how I would have been affected by it.
So basically, it becomes a good decision.
I felt as though it became a good decision in the end because part of me wanted to do it then, I guess the emotional side, the mental side, but being the physical side and maybe patience even. I became a guitar teacher at one stage and I had to give up because I just didn't have the patience for the students that wouldn't do as they're told.
Oh, that's a funny story. Maybe we'll go there one day. Now, what kind of decision did you used to make out of, pressure or expectation?
Well, I guess there's lots from when you grow up. You're expected to be this kind of person, um, and you make decisions based upon that. You know, I better do this because it'll look good. I mean, the whole reason why we're not all running around in jail or mental institutions, or to the degree, is because we've learned to behave. We've learned to do this. We've learned to do that. As uncomfortable as sometimes it may have been. Um, but they're decisions that we grew up with.
And what decisions could there have been that you always made under pressure? Like a pressure decision, like you had to do it.
Working,
Yep.
just working because you're limited. Nowadays you're limited working, and there's no pressure for the young people nowadays because let's face it, they'll go through training in school to do one particular job and it's not out there, but they won't take anything else on until that job comes up. Whereas we'll just did jobs we didn't like to do. Because we're
Yeah.
pressured into obviously this is whether it's your loved one or your relationship or your folks or you know
And you had an expectation to fulfill.
everybody was expected to do that, to take on that role and to accept what is, to put up with it, because it's going to benefit you at the end of the day, whether that be a pay or
A contribution.
contribution, and things would come with that.
Mm.
Because you were pressured into doing this and you followed that and you did that, for these other things that come out of that.
So when you were most disconnected, so what that really means is when you were most not with an open mind, what were your decisions usually based on? So were they based on stress, responsibility, guilt, convenience, or just avoiding conflict?
Responsibility and guilt.
Okay.
I mean, all the conflicts would come through any decision you made that would be against it. But
True.
you were felt guilty, to not do it because you had to do it
To survive.
to survive.
Yeah.
Let's face it. There's I've once said before that there's a time when I was unemployed for a number of time until I was able to be straight away put in a position to work again. And through those times, there was no pressure. There was no this, that, and the other because I closed all of that off. I wasn't living at home, but then, that soon gets the better of you. You know, you even pressure yourself into doing. Oh gosh, I can't live this life no more. And that's one side that's loving it, and your other side is yeah, but look, you got holes in your jeans, mate. You got a bomb car.
Where's this getting you, kind
Where's
of
this
thing?
getting you? Stop going around to Lewis Court and getting meals off grandma.
So this is this next part of our asking questions series is, why men make head first decisions. This will be interesting, right? Do you reckon you make head first decisions?
We've been known to make head first decisions. Yes, that's for sure. We'll like to look at something and oh, yep, great, boom, got to do that. And in amongst it, you go, oh, well, now I have to man up and follow through with it because that was the decision I made. And you're forever trying to, what's the best way out of this
Oh,
without losing any, pride or whatever like this.
moral pride.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can say, yeah, no, I just didn't like it in the end. So, it's just not my thing. That's about it. That's all us men would need to say. Um, Without, oh, look, it's females would be sort of like, oh, look, I really didn't like the way I was treated or the work was just too much in the end. We'd just, I suppose, yeah, no,
It wasn't me.
this wasn't me in the end of the day. Yeah.
So this might lead into these next questions. Did you ever talk yourself into something because it was the smart or right thing, even though it didn't feel right?
Uh, well, when you say even though it didn't feel right, did it not feel right within yourself because of the
Yeah.
person you were,
Yes.
as
That.
opposed to it was the right thing to do because that's what society expects of you?
So it's what to do within you because it's a talking about feeling right and aligned. So when you're aligned with yourself, you're always making decisions that benefit you and always work for you, and you're always living from that place of joy and happiness and peace. So when you talked yourself into something because it was the smart or right thing at the time, but it didn't align with who you were inside.
Uh, well, that goes upon other things I've talked about when you change when you know that that's the time you change of life. So there's been many times of those situations where, as I said it before, I'm glad I've made those decisions, but I didn't feel like I wanted to make them there and then. As you say,
You talked yourself into
I
them.
talked to myself into it. This is what I've got to do now, and this is what's expected now, uh, and that's at the start. As you go through it, you realise, well, this is the greatest thing I could have ever done. This is absolutely fantastic. I don't know what I was thinking. Jesus, if I hadn't have taken this on, where would I be now?
Yeah.
So yeah, you take things on, knowing that this is the right thing to do
And you
from
talk yourself
everybody, and you
into
talk
it.
yourself into it, and you convince yourself, well, this is the way it's going to be. Okay, I'm going to accept this, going to take on this role, and you do, and you realize, wow, because sometimes when we go through life, we go through things without stepping outside the box and seeing what it's going to be like later on,
Yeah.
or the effect that it's having on everybody else around you, um, and step inside that box and go forth with that self-built knowledge, to go through it a lot betterly and to come out at the other end, a lot better. And that certainly happened, quite a few times. I remember leaving when I left school, that decision leaving school, the way I am now physically, and I'm like, this is easy for me to say, well, I wish I hadn't have done it, but in a way I'm glad I had done it because it's the only life that I've known now and I love it.
So that leads into the next question too, which is how much of your decision making used to come from logic and how much from your actual lived experience or needs for yourself?
the logic came in later on down the track, the
Okay.
actual needs and everything, because you didn't understand logic until you sort of got to a certain age. So it was always about the needs, for yourself. This is only, all of what's been said is only coming from me, who's, growing up quite independently in given the situation. So it's been all about me.
Meeting your needs.
Meeting my needs. As far as right or wrong, I was always, had my mother beside me that I was never going to, make her think her son's, doing this, that, and the other thing that's wrong. Um, but yeah, it's yeah,
So from your lived experiences that you had and the needs that you had to meet, most of your decision making was done then. You found the logic about that later on
yeah,
once you'd learnt a lot more lived experience.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The more lived experience you go through life, the more. If you could have a book from say the age of 9, what you're going to do all the way through to 20, there'd be things in there that you think, oh, I'm not going to do that. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But as you grow up and you experience other things, then that becomes, a very acceptable thing. So we often do go through times when I rode and I don't accept this and this isn't going to happen. But when you do it, it's God, glad I did that.
So
Even
this
though
is
even though I might have been pressured in it, talked into it doing, but thanks for doing that.
so this is the next leading question too, which you're pretty much answering is, did you ever choose something because you felt you should, not because you wanted to?
Uh,
Did you think you lived a lot of your life doing that?
up until the age where I can control my own life, no.
Okay.
But prior to that, you know,
You just should do that.
I should do that. Yeah,
And so this is where we go into the cost of the disconnected choices. So this is going to be an interesting conversation because we need to sort of reshape it into words that we can understand. So what were the signs? So for me or for you, I think that would be indications. Signs are like the indications that a decision wasn't actually right for you. So what did you feel or know or see or recognize going on in your life when you'd made that decision that it wasn't the right decision for you?
um, um, doing the last job I'd done, because obviously the physical point where I'm at now, it wasn't really the right thing to do. I should never have done the type of job that I did. Um, but I did it, and that would be the only thing.
Like what were the signs that you
The
started to
sign,
feel?
well, the signs were bodily pain.
Okay,
You know, I'm 62, so way back in the day, that was all put aside.
lifting
Um,
things.
you didn't worry about pain. You know,
Okay.
uh, pain was a dirty word back in the old days. Uh,
So pain was
and so,
dismissed.
so pain was dismissed, and so right from a young age, limited jobs we had, and you knew no different. You knew no better. So I did that job, and the way I am now, it was a pretty poor decision. In a lot of ways, I'm glad that's put aside. I'm glad I did do it, for a lot of other reasons. But overall, um,
So
yeah,
that's showing that disconnect in a decision. So it's like your body was shouting out to you that this is not the best option for you
yeah, yeah,
and your, who you are, your build or it's probably good for your experience, but there was something in there that was saying this is not right. But you continued on because
we continue on
there was
because
no other decision.
there's no other decision. And that's it. We continue. This is all you know. What else are you going to do? You've only ever done this, so you'll keep going. Unbeknown to realize that when you eventually do stop, oh, you can do all these other things. But at that time, you don't think of that, because you come from an era of expectations. This is what you're going to do. This is what's expected of you. Work. Feed the family, whether you put it up with it or not. So your decisions become based upon things you later on realise you wish you hadn't have done.
So looking back at that last decision that we're just talking on, still staying with that, What did that decision cost you? Did it
Oh, it costed me lots of things. That
did,
decision costed me a lot of physical abilities
yep,
that I'm unable to do now. Um, you lose a lot of things, but if you look at it in a certain kind of way, you gain a lot of other things.
there you go.
So you lose a lot of things that you're just used to doing yourself. You grew up and you gave yourself the amount of freedom that you wanted to have, whether it's ride push bikes, ride motorbikes, hoon around in cars or do whatever. But then later on, you can't do all that. You can't do any of that. So, it was
So that
this.
took some energy
It took,
away.
yeah. It's your life's based upon the exciting things you want to do that you end up regretting later on.
Because it's taken a little bit
It's
of,
taken its toll.
yep. And so it's taken your energy of what you can now do, like the amount of energy that
Yeah,
you
the
can do.
physical energy,
Yeah.
the capabilities of it. Like
Yep.
I've got there's a lot of damage in me, and it's those things that I'm unable to do. And you're unable to do them because you try and do them, as opposed to I don't think I'll be able to do that, so I won't do it. You have a go at doing it, to then realize you can't do it.
And that was based on those decisions that have led you where you are
Yeah.
today, which is not necessarily bad because you've done some learning. But did you ever feel like you were living someone else's version of life instead of your own?
Oh, this is how it has to be done, so you've got to do it that way.
So is that somebody else's version?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is the only way I was taught. So this is how you've got to do it now. In schools like that, you get taught a certain way to do sums, and everybody's taught that same way to do sums. But we all know as we get older, there's lots of ways of doing sums that are better than the original way that we were taught.
Yeah. And we've already answered the next questions, of course, because he's always ahead of the game. Because it was, did you ever feel the warning signs of a bad decision? Well, you did. It was in your body, and you got the tension, and you got the heaviness,
Yeah,
and you push through anyway.
you push through anyway, and you've got the regrets of it. You're physically wearing the regrets of it.
So looking at now, as opposed to then, what does a no, like, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that because it's a bad decision for you now and you're aligned. So what does a no feel like to you now compared to back then?
I know is based upon the body you have now, the mind that you have now. Sometimes that mind can work against your body. Your mind goes, "We can do it," until you try doing it, and the body goes, I told you, you just can't do it." So that's what you start accepting, which is uncomfortable.
So a no feels
No,
different to back
back
then. You
then
push through a
you
no.
push through it. Yeah, yeah. No, you're not allowed to do. Huh? Not allowed to do it. Huh?
I'm gonna do it. I don't care if there's a no.
Mum saying, "Don't go too close to the cliffs, you might fall over." No worries. The next day they're not there. We're climbing down them cliffs.
So now, how does your body respond when something isn't right for you? It tells you, I told you so. Is that right?
Yeah, my mind just accepts before the body. So you get so used to the body telling you that you shouldn't have done it, that it works together, and just go, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. People say, oh, we're going to go do this and do that. Yeah, no, no.
Because then you're actually looking into your body because you know how your body feels. And so therefore you can respond with your mind because you've already visited that.
Because your body's already damaged. So there's that constant reminder. It's not like your body's never been damaged before. You'll get somebody my age that's never had a damaged body before, and they, "Oh, I reckon I could do this." And I go, "Are you sure you don't want to have a practice run?" You know, like a 68-year bloke might come up to me and said, "Oh, he rides his bike every now and then." I'm thinking of riding around Australia. I'm thinking now, oh yeah, right. How long you got in this amount of time? So you're going to have these certain amount of k's every day. Yeah, I reckon. Well, why don't you go for a ride around Victoria first, and see how you go. Then you can really work out how far. Oh,
I understand that. I know someone who's doing the same thing. So maybe it's the same person. But when we talk about men and listening to signs, so to speak, The body is
So his mind's convincing his body he can still do it.
but the body understand that the bodies that for men they understand body signals more than emotional words or more than mind words. So
Oh yes, yes, yeah. So I could keep telling him this, but he won't do it. He'll jump on his bike and go try and go around Australia.
and
And
his
good luck
body's
to him
going
if
to
he makes it and he's physical enough and everything like this. We'll never hear that. We'll never hear that. Oh God, I had to be in Perth and laid yourself up to a week. I was that stuffed.
we're not going to hear
We're
that,
not going
no.
to hear that. No.
So what I want to know is we're going to wrap it up. We haven't got long to go. So just returning to decisions that that feel like you. So that might be more as you become more open-minded, as you become what I call more awakened. You know, what changed in the way that you make choices now?
What changes in the way that I make choices?
Yeah.
Um, I make choices now based upon that I know my limitations now. I know
Yep.
what I can do and what I can't do. So there's choices that I'd like to do, but I choose not to do it because of that. There's choices that I choose to do. I know I can physically do it. If it's a mental problem, well, that's going to make me want to have a go at doing it.
There you go. So that's more aligned.
Yeah, because your mental ability doesn't get weak. It might get absent. But it's your physical body that gets weak,
Yeah.
and sooner or later it's aligned, you know. But that doesn't mean to say that we still don't have a go. We still might have a go and then realize straight into it. Oh God, no, I shouldn't have done that. No, I'm just.
Which is also you connecting to your body more
We have
and
to keep
listening.
mentally. We have to keep reminding our bodies, keep asking our bodies, can we still do this? And our answer is, well, have a go. Well, I doubt it, but have a go and you can make up your own decision. So your mind still has to be the conqueror of that physical decision.
Yeah. And this is a really great one. You know, what's one decision? Let's look at that mind. What's one decision that you're proud of because it actually came from you? So that's like in your heart, just you, and not from expectation or pressure.
Uh, just absolutely being myself.
When was that?
Uh,
No.
I know because I've always been myself.
But when was it really, really you? And there was no expectation coming, there was no pressure from society, no expectations from family or children. When was that a real you decision?
I guess when I moved out of home,
Okay.
you move out of home and you do all this. You haven't got that one person beside you in the household. And then that grows when you move out of town. You go to a different town, and you haven't got all these expectations of all these locals around you or whatever. And then you go to the city, and then you grow up all of a sudden because you realise how immature everyone is back in your hometown. And then you come back and wonder why you've got to go back again.
So a little bit
A
wiser.
little bit wiser, yeah, yeah. And I mean, going out at sea and out at fishing, well, I could really be myself a lot more out there than on land. There's no one to see me crack the shits out on the cray boat.
But that was the one decision was moving out was that one thing that came from you and that you felt really proud of because it obviously helped you grow and it wasn't done from expectation or
Well,
pressure.
um, well, yes, I'm sorry. I guess when you move out of home, um, well, no, because in our household, when I first started work, I was still living at home, and Mum asked me to pay, board and rent or whatever like this, and I thought that was just a shock. I thought, oh my gosh,
I think everyone thinks it's a
wow,
shock.
gee. I understood it and everything like that. But then after that, I learnt, well, now I am, independent. When I moved out of home, boom, that's when
It all hits.
it all hits because
So
you're building yourself up to it.
that's true. And if someone's listening on this podcast right now who feels lost or disconnected or hasn't got that open mind when they're making some choices in their life or big decisions or just decisions, what would you suggest they pay attention to first?
To yourself.
In
Always pay attention to yourself, your gut feeling, your intuition. If you feel comfortable about even talking to yourself and you block everything else out, and if that's comfortable to you, then you just go for it, because you're not living a life of everybody else. You're living a life of you. And we're so forever compounded our lives by the outside society and what it recommends and what we should do and be like the Joneses and everything like this. If you feel comfortable within yourself to do it, then that's the greatest thing you can give to yourself, because that's your body, that's your mind telling you this is great, we can do this, we can control this, despite what outside influences you're influenced by, because we are influenced by outside decisions, from what we wear, what we do, what TVs we watch, and all these sorts of things. So do it from you, no matter what, and block everything else out. Because it's all about you, and if other people may feel like what you're doing is stupid and uncomfortable, well, either one day they'll get in that position where they're faced with it. And if they're not, how can they preach you to tell you how you should be feeling about it?
Yeah, that comes down to when you are asking for advice from other people, you've got to be asking advice if you're wanting help in that choice or decision from a person who's been there and done
Who's
it,
been there and done
and
it?
not from a person who hasn't. So you'd never go and ask someone, can I invest all this money, to your next door neighbor who has been working at Safeway for 20 years. You're going to go to a financial advisor, most likely, or from someone who's invested and made a great deal of money. So it's about going to those people. So in closing, we haven't really got any more questions, but questions for you are, what have you learned about yourself from the decisions that you made when you weren't aligned or open-minded or connected to who you really are? So what have you learned about yourself?
And guys,
What have you learned? I'm asking you now.
are you asking me?
Yeah, what have you learned about yourself, from the decisions you made when, you
Well,
weren't
I've learned just to trust your own decisions.
That's
I've learned to just trust your own independency and your own decision making, to not be the worst thing on earth, to not be the worst what everybody else may think. It's all about you in this life, and you can be compassionate, you can show empathy to everybody else, you can show kindness and love to everybody else. And how you do that is sharing yourself with them. And you do this unconditionally, absolute unconditionally. There's no expectations from anybody, because you're doing it on yourself. You're thinking about yourself to do. So just be yourself and just
do it anyway.
do it anyway. And we're born to not do anything stupid or illegal or anything like that sort of thing. We're not talking about that. But if you want to, let look at it this way, an example, classic example. It's unfortunate that people find it difficult to go to the gym and start working out, because how they feel about their body. How do they feel about their body? Because what society is made them feel like they should be. And that's what we all live under. But stop doing that. Live for yourself and for your own decisions, but still have that empathy and love and caring for
Which means if
everybody
you
else
want to go and feel strong,
unconditionally.
you can go and feel strong at the gym if you want to. Which also brought up something for me that I heard just recently. And it was about decision making, or, just where you are in life at the moment. And they said, if this could be where you are right now in life, make this be the worst of what it could possibly be, which means that it can only be better from here in every single thing you do. And even now, if it's really great for you now, this can be the only worst it can be.
Well, it goes under the heading of life is what you make of it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Life is what you make of it. Your decisions come from yourself. And when you make a choice, you then accept all the paraphernalia that comes with that choice. You know,
Consequences, they're called.
consequences.
You're living in
Yeah.
consequences.
And I mean, you can make individual choices about those consequences.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're making those individual choices about the consequences because of the original choice that you chose to do down the track.
So wrapping up, there is a continuation on this. So in the last episode, I did a prelude. So now I'm going to do an after one because there's more information that I'd like to give on that from another perspective, just with me. So I'd love you to continue watching that after this episode. But wrapping this one up in one sentence, disconnected decisions are the ones we make to keep life running. So the ones that are done with pressure, the ones that are done with expectations when we're not connected to ourselves. They keep the life running. When you get connected decisions, when you're aligned with yourself, when you're open-minded, are the ones we make to actually live, which is like living our purpose.
Yep.
Nothing to add there. So, in closing, we thank you very much for listening today. We've taken up a nice half hour of your time, and we do hope that you share this podcast with someone who might want to hear it. Like it and subscribe, of course. And we look forward to the next episode.
Thank you. Goodbye. And I'd like to say a lot more, but I could just rambling on
Chewing.
on and on and on.
He's going to keep saying more and more. We'll get that whole story, believe me. Anyway, it's out from us. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye.